Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to Getting Started with Salesforce DX and CLI Part 4. So before we get into it, let's do a quick recap. So thinking back to Part 1, in Part 1 we introduced you to the CLI and how you authorize non-Scratch orgs against the CLI, how you list the Scratch orgs that you've connected to the CLI, and how you assign aliases for convenience. So when you're doing stuff in the CLI, you can just call the alias rather than the username. All right. In Part 2, we started to look at the data commands and how you can interact with Salesforce data from the CLI. So a few clever little things there, how we can export, import, create records, and so on. So kind of see that as a way to automate data imports. If you were doing that kind of thing with Salesforce Data Loader, you could probably progress from that to the CLI. Write a bunch of scripts for that, so that's kind of cool. Part 3, we started to look at the Apex side of things, so how we can extract the logs from the Salesforce org and bring it down locally into an IDE. It's very useful. And also how we can execute Apex to save us going into the dev console and running anonymous Apex there. We can build up a library of scripts locally and we can just execute them easily via the CLI. So where does that leave us? Okay, so that leaves us nicely on to creating projects and also creating orgs, but more specifically creating Scratch orgs, all right? So a couple of other things here. So we've got a YouTube playlist that just groups together all of the CLI videos for you. And then if you want more information beyond what I'm telling you, you can obviously go to Trailhead, and there is the Trailhead link there. Okay. So let's have a look at our next command, the force project command. So a couple of prerequisites that you need to be aware of. Now, obviously, you've already seen me use VS Code in some of the videos, but here's the link. If you haven't installed it yet, it's definitely advisable that you should download that and install it. Once you have it installed, what you want to do is you want to be able to install code in your command path so that you can do things like just type code and then the folder or code dot to open the current folder in the IDE for you. Okay, when I get to that, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Of course, you need to download and install the CLI. All right, you can download it from that link, but you can also, if you are more technical, you can also quickly install it using an npm. So if you just type the command there, that will install it for you from the command prompt. All right, and then you will need the VS Code extensions, which brings all of the DX goodness and all of that stuff into VS Code for you. All right, so that's the prerequisites. What are we going to look at today? So we're going to look at creating some projects. We're going to create two types of projects. We're going to create a project, so a default type of project for a Scratch org. Okay, that's the first example that you see here. Then new with Winter 19, we're going to create a project that will support sandboxes so that you can connect up VS Code and work with VS Code and Salesforce against a normal sandbox. Okay. That has the magic switch, or the magic parameter, I should say, at the end, -x there, which just tells it to use the manifest or a package.xml. All right, so let's have a look at how we do this. So let's just jump to terminal. All right, so here we are in the terminal. So I'm in my demo folder. Sorry, I'm in my demo profile, but I'm just going to make a folder and just call it SFDX. I'm just going to change into that. Right. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a project. So I'm going to go project create -h, if I can type. All right, I'm just going to do -h because it's going to give me a list of parameters. All right, just so that I can have a look at those and then build up my string as I need it. So I'm going to create a project and I'm going to call this, let's call it demo1, or let's call it Scratch org actually. Let's call it Scratch org dev. All right, the -n just gives it a name. So that's the minimum set of parameters that I need to do that. So this will set up the scaffolding for that. So you can see it creates a folder with the name that I've just provided, and it sets up the basic files. Okay, so if we were to tab into that, we'd be ready to like change the configuration and then create our scratch org, or simply create our scratch org. All right, so I'm just going to create 2 projects here. So I'm just going to call this Sandbox Dev, and I'm going to put -x on the end. Okay, if we just look up here, -x means that I want to use a manifest, so a package.xml for a change set based development. Okay, so whatever's in my package.xml, I can bring down to the IDE and change, and vice versa. I can create stuff locally, add it to my package.xml, and then deploy it to a normal sandbox. So let's just hit enter. All right, so that's created another project. So at this point, I've got 2 projects. I've got Scratch Org Dev and I've got Sandbox Dev. If I just do ls, I can see both of them there. All right, so now let's do some funkiness with code. So VS Code is installed. So now if I type code, all right, and I first want to open up my Scratch org, I can do that. I can start typing the name of the folder and then tab. Now if I hit enter, what this will do is this will open up my project in VS Code for me. All right, so there's the structure. All right, I can see all of the files nicely created for me. All right, now I can also do this. I can come back to here and let's just open up the other one. So Sandbox. Okay, so that now opens up that one. So at this point, I've actually got 2 VS Codes open. See what I mean? That opens up extremely quick. All right, and I can see the difference here. So this is my Sandbox Dev one. I've got my package.xml. All right, and I have my Scratch org one, which doesn't have that. Okay, so let's have a look and see what orgs are connected to the CLI. So I'm just going to run, if you remember, SF DX force org list. Should tell me that I've got none. Okay, so I don't have any orgs connected. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to connect what is known as a Dev Hub org. But before we do that, I'm just going to jump back into the presentation. All right, and just jump on to the next one. Okay, so what do we have next? So before we create the org, we need to connect up to a Dev Hub. The Dev Hub gives us access to Scratch orgs. All right, so prior to Winter 19, you would only have the Dev Hub in your paid org, so your production org. Okay, or if you spun up a Salesforce DX trial, you would have it. But now, any Winter 19 developer orgs, so you can sign up here and get one, will give you 3 Scratch orgs. Okay, so you can try out DX using a developer org now and create your Scratch orgs that are connected to the developer org. So that's good news. All right, so what else can we do? So then we can create some Scratch orgs. Okay, we're going to look at 2 ways of creating Scratch orgs. All right. You can create it based on a Scratch org definition file. So we can put some things in that file that tells DX what to create. So one of my favorites is like if you need an org with person accounts. Previously you had to contact support and go through all of that rigmarole to get person accounts enabled. Well, guess what? If you're using DX, you can just spin up a Scratch org with person accounts. All right. The other thing you see there is we're giving it a name. So an -a just tells it the alias, and then the -d, you can probably guess, that's the number of days between 1 and 30. So Scratch orgs don't last forever. Okay, so you've got to set an expiration. So you can set that to be 30, 7, whatever your requirements are. The other way of doing that, if you wanted to just create a Scratch org and you don't care about using the definition file, is the second one. You can just create a Scratch org just like this. You can give it an alias, set the number of days, and specify the edition. Now, at this point in time, I've only been creating developer edition Scratch orgs. It's possible to create enterprise edition Scratch orgs, but I've never done that. But I've just stuck with developer because it kind of gives us everything that we would need. And as an ISV or as an independent person developing stuff, you'd most likely be in a developer org anyway. Okay. Then perhaps if you wanted to create an enterprise edition and practice deploying your code, then maybe that's where the benefits of creating a scratch org in an enterprise edition would come in handy. Then the other thing that we do there is we need to set the default username so that VS Code knows the default username for the project. So let's have a look at how we do all this. All right, so I'm first going to I'm going to authorize my Dev Hub. So let's go force author, I think it was that. Okay, so we need web, login. I'm just going to go -h. Right, so we're going to set the alias. I'm just going to call this Dev Hub for simplicity. All right, that should have opened up Chrome, which it has. So let's just type mgil at scratch demo.com. Let's put my password in. I'm just going to grant access to the CLI. Give that a second to log in, and then we're going to jump back to this. Right, so that's good news. Okay, so that's authenticated our org. So we just need to make sure that we make that the default Dev Hub org. All right, so we're going to set that. So let's go default dev org to Dev Hub. I'm just going to make that -G for global. All right, that looks good. So let's just go to our list. Okay, so there we have our Dev Hub org, which is a Winter 19 developer org, plain and simple. All right, and it's now connected globally as our Dev Hub. That's why you see the D there for default, or Dev Hub. All right, so let's look at the two different ways of creating projects. So I'm just going to shut down VS Code. And I'm just going to show you another trick. So we have our two folders in here. So let's first go into our Scratch org dev folder. So I'm inside here, which has the default scaffolding that I created. So now I just want to open this in VS Code. So if I just type code space dot, this will do the same thing as code, open up the folder. All right. Okay, so that's VS Code opened up for us nicely within our default project. So there was two ways of creating Scratch orgs. If you remember, we can create a Scratch org just on the fly via the CLI, just passing in the necessary parameters, or we can specify our parameters in the project Scratch definition JSON file. Okay, so here is that. Let me just hit Command plus. Okay, that will just bring that a little bit bigger for you. And another little thing is Command B, just toggles the side panel open and closed. All right. And another one, actually, I might as well just mention it while I'm here. Control tilde opens up a terminal, which will be useful for us in 2 seconds. Okay, so what do we have in here? So this is the default Scratch definition file. It has the demo, so it has an org name. So let's just call this my first Scratch org. All right, I can override the name. Edition developer, remember what I said, you got developer or enterprise. I'm just going to leave it developer. Okay, now there are a bunch of other parameters that you can specify in here. So you can specify the admin email. All right, So you can specify that to be something different than your own if you wanted to. Or possibly the most important one is features. All right, so what features can we specify in here? So this is an array of features or a list of features that you need to specify. Now I mentioned person accounts, so I can just put person accounts in here. And then let's put a semicolon on the end and save that. Now before I do anything with this, let's just jump back to this. So if you go to the online help and then go to the Salesforce DX Developer Guide and look for supported features, in here you'll see a list of features that you can enable by default when you're Scratch org. So person accounts is the one that we're going to use for this demo. And as you scroll down here, you can just see that list of features. So multi-currency, that's another one as well. So person accounts, multi-currency. Normally you would have to ring up support. If you're spinning up a Scratch org, you don't have to do that. All right, so let's just jump back to that. So I've made sure I've saved that. That is all saved. Right, so now I'm going to create my Scratch org. All right, so I'm going to open up Terminal. So I'm just going to do Control T. All right, so that brings up my Scratch org. I'm just going to come back to here. All right, and we're just going to look at the command. So I'll share this deck. It's the same deck that I've been building up through the series. So we'll make sure that we share this entire deck with you. So I'm just going to cut and paste that command. I'm just going to put it in here. All right. So the -F here is just jumping off to this Scratch org definition file. The -A, that's the alias, and the D is the number of days. Not sure what's going to happen here, but okay. Oh, I accidentally ran it at the same time. Well, I suppose that saves me from running it, which is all good. That was just a byproduct of me cutting and pasting in there. So booyah, okay, that's created a Scratch org for me. So let's just have a look at our org list now. Let's go force org, SFDX force org list. So now I'm inside VS Code. I've got terminal, so there's no need for me now to be switching between screens. I can even just full screen this. All right, so I can see my Dev Hub. So that's where this Scratch org was created to, and I can see there's my Scratch org that was created. All right, so the next thing I want to do is set my default org inside here to be my new Scratch org. So I'm going to do this. All right, and then I'm just going to say this equals, let's have a look, my alias. So my default username equals my first org. Now the things to watch out for, what should happen, now obviously this is live, you should see the IDE pick up the default Scratch org, if we're lucky. All right, now I have a feeling that where I created a demo profile that it hasn't installed the Salesforce stuff in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back to here and I'm going to jump onto this, and this is completely not planned, but the link which we will share just gives me the opportunity to open up VS Code and install these extensions, which I should have, admittedly, I should have done before. So we're just going to let that install. So it's my bad, but it's kind of good because you're seeing how easy it is to install extensions. All right, so just give that a couple of seconds. Okay, it should prompt us to reload to reactivate. All right, I'm going to agree to all of that. Don't know what that is all about. But the good news is that down here, there you go, right. I've just clicked on my default org and it's gone into my default Scratch org. Okay, I can see it's called Business Drive, completely random. Let's just have a quick look then. So let's just see what this is. If I go new here, what are we looking for? We're looking for person accounts. And there it is. All right, so let's come back to this. So what else do we have now? So the other things that we can do very quickly is our Command P will bring up lots of things. Now if I just do chevron and start typing SFDX, okay, you start to get to the SFDX specific commands in here. All right, all kinds of things there. So let's just show you very quickly how this works. So let's start first with just creating something in the org and how that comes down in here, and then I'll create something and push that up to the org. Excuse me. So let's come in here and let's do edit object. Let's go new. Let's just do a new date field for this example. Let's just call this contract end date. Just hitting all the defaults here without a care in the world. Okay, so I'm in the org. I've changed the org. I've added a field. I come back to here and I do Command P. Let's have a look. So let's see the changes. Display list. So let's go. What am I looking at? View all changes. Here we go. View all changes in default Scratch org. Let's run this one. My default Scratch org. There it is. Right. So hey presto, it picks up a bunch of changes. But probably the most important one is the top one. It picks up the contract end date that I just created there. Because it's a developer org, there's already some customization in there. That's why you see the profiles and so on and so forth. All right, so now if I want to bring that down locally, I can just go SFDX pull. Or I can just type pull. I don't need to do that. Pull from default Scratch org. Let's just run a quick pull. All right, so it tells me that they're down. So now what do I see? I start to see in here metadata, but metadata in the new DX format. So the account field is there. Previously, that used to just be one big account object with all the fields and all the list views and all that stuff. In the new DX format, they come down as individual, which is quite nice. Obviously, layouts or components, there isn't any. Right. So that's that. To go the other way, so if I wanted to just, okay, so going back the other way, let's create an Apex class, demo class. All right. Okay. So that's created a demo class. Now, probably worth just pointing out here very quickly, I should have created a classes folder here, but it's created it here. So let's just have a look and go push. So now we want to do a push to default Scratch org. All right, let's push that up. Okay, let's go in and have a look. It's actually kind of like a small blessing in disguise, if you like. It just shows you that folder structure. Previously, you had to ensure that everything was in the source folder, but under the new DX world, you've got complete flexibility over where you put things, how you manage things, which is good, right? So let's just jump into here. Let's just go to our classes. You can see our demo class. Now let's just, for the purpose of this video, let's just quickly delete that. So we've gone full circle here. So if I just rerun command, so Command P, and do a pull from default scratch org. Okay, what it has just done is it's just deleted that class. All right, so that's your first scratch org. That's setting the default scratch org. That's making changes in the org and also making changes locally and keeping the two in sync. All right, let's have a look at the other example. So let's just come out of here and let's look at our Sandbox Dev now. So let's go Code Sandbox Dev and open this one up. Okay, so this one's a little bit different, right? This is now driven through the package.xml. All right, so I'm going to set the default org for this one to be my Dev Hub org because it's a developer org, right? So let's just do Control tilde, and I'm now going to run this and set this to be my Dev Hub. I think that's right. All right, so now this shows up down here. So if I just do sfdx force org list, I'm just going to do Command P to get rid of that. Let's get rid of that as well. Right, okay. So, all right, so that's now our default. Great. So what can we do here? Well, we can bring down the metadata. So as you can see at the moment, there's nothing in here. So if I highlight the manifest and go right click, I can go retrieve source. Let's try again. I'm going to actually select the package.xml, retrieve. Let's try again. All right, did that do its magic or did it not? Retrieve source. So that means that there's nothing in there. So let's do something. Let's create a class. Demo me. All right. Okay, so let's see if I can now deploy that to source to the org. I didn't like that, possibly didn't like that because of the folder structure. So let's just do some things here. Let's go into let's come into here and let's go make dir classes. All right, and I'm just going to drag this into there. All right. Let's come back out and let's try to deploy to source org. Okay, right, confirmation that that's been deployed to the source org. So that's good news, right? Yes. So if I was working with a non-scratch org, I would probably most likely organize my structure in here very similar to how it would be in any other IDE or any other Ant deployment. In essence, the main folder is your source folder. All right, so now let's just click on the default hub. Should just jump us into the main Scratch org, Apex classes, demo me. Okay, so there we have it. So that deployed our class. So let's just do a little bit of a recap because we're at the 30-minute mark and I don't want to go on much more than this. Okay, so 4 parts. Most recent part that you're watching right now, be on the playlist. Make sure that you have VS Code downloaded and installed. Remember the Command P and the Control tilde. Okay, install the VS Code extensions. Then you've got 2 ways to create your project scaffolding. One for non-Scratch orgs and one for Scratch orgs. Then using either a paid org, where you get an allocation of Scratch orgs, I think it's 40, it may be more for unlimited. And certainly if you have a Winter 19 developer org, okay, you get 3 Scratch orgs there to play around with. You can create your Scratch orgs like you see there based on the project Scratch definition, or you could just simply pass in all of the parameters that are in the definition JSON into a single line. Okay, remember to set your default username so that in here, in the IDE, it will highlight here, and then obviously any of the commands that you have, SFDX commands. Okay, where you see default, open default Scratch org. If you were to do that like that, it would jump you into that. And that is it. So sorry it's a long one, but hopefully you enjoy it. Feels like there'll be more to come. All right, take it easy.